Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to another episode of Red Pill versus Blue Pill. My name is Dr. DeLon Canterbury, one of the CEOs and founders of Geriatrics. And so during this live series, we have been discussing really the importance of leveraging your pharmacist to incorporate de-prescribing into your clinical setting. So this is a personal project passion of mine that I want to share with you and make sure you have the tools that you need to get started today. So for those who may not know me, again, I am the founder of Geriatrics, but also focus on de-prescribing for our senior patients while working with nursing homes, working with caregiver support groups, and showing the versatility of pharmacists in our clinical setting today. So why am I here in front of you again? Today we'll be discussing some of the 3 simple ways that people can start using de-prescribing and to increase your clients and revenue base with de-prescribing at the helm. So we're going to share some of those tips that I have for you on how to do that today. But what really got me in this space was just seeing how many people have no clue what pharmacists can do for their patients, or how they can use them into their business model, or how you can leverage your staff that you already have available to talk about de-prescribing. Guess what? It's not taboo. It shouldn't be like a cuss word or Voldemort's name said out loud to talk about de-prescribing. So we're going to flip the script and take that red pill instead of the blue pill and show people that there is a way that you can not only use de-prescribing as a revenue generating stream and service for your business, but also as a way to improve patient safety and client outcomes when it comes to our seniors who suffer from the use of high-risk medications in this population. So here's the reality though. People oftentimes in this space, whether they're senior care providers, it could be for adult daycare centers, they could be easily speech therapists, OT, PT, people who just see a bunch of seniors and find time and time again that they're taking way, way too many meds. They don't know what to really do. And if they do know what to do, the most they try to attempt to provide is telling the patient to talk to their doctor. Now, intuitively, we know that's like one of the first things you can start to do, right? But it puts the onus back on the patient who's already overwhelmed, already not really thinking about the meds like that, or they feel like it's gonna fall on deaf ears. And so they have a little disconnect in the efficacy in just having a patient talk to the doctor. One, that visit may not be for another few months, and so they might forget, they might slip their mind. Two, they can send a message in my chart, but even so, the patient may not feel comfortable enough to bring that up. And so that's where the power of having a progressive healthcare team, but also a pharmacist who's keenly focused in on those medications can be of strategic value, not just for the patient, but for that clinical setting, because now we're embracing a culture of holistic care, of team-based care, and not fee-for-service care, and looking for any issues that may be avoided had a pharmacist been there to begin with. So what people try to do when they see their patients are over-medicated is to one, ask, have you told your doctor? Have you talked to them about that? We know that's, ideally what we want done in some way, shape, or form. But again, it puts a lot of the work back on the patient. And sometimes that's just hard to do given how hectic life can be. This is also even more frustrating for a caregiver who simply is already at wit's end, has already brought this up. And well, let's be honest, they don't always feel the most listened to or heard when they're in the clinic. So it has a little more heft when you have a professional clinician behind the recommendation or thought process, so we can back our patients up to the nth degree as needed, right? So they also sometimes may see that it's an issue and just refer that out. So again, they may see it as it's not my problem, so why should I even deal with this? And that again is a problem with our medication mindset. We are not actively looking for ways to think forward and see how the bigger problem is not the patient, but the overuse of harmful meds in their life, which can affect you on the back end. And people fail to realize that if you're using more time, more resources, more of your staff to attend to a patient that's really just unmanaged completely with their meds or suffering from adverse events, then you're going to end up paying in some way, shape, or form, whether it be directly or indirectly, on how to manage that patient's well-being, whether it's a ding from Medicare audits, whether it may be a readmission rate, whether it may be some other metric that's quantified by insurers. These things should play in the back of your mind as a healthcare or home care industry owner on what to avoid, because as you know, budget margins are tight. So people are trying to squeeze as much as they can and sustain a profitable revenue model. Why isn't this approach of addressing the need for deprescribing, why isn't it working? And the truth is, to be honest with you, we are not leveraging clinicians like pharmacists who literally know the ins and outs of medications like the back of their hands. Unfortunately, it's not all on pharmacists. Our healthcare system doesn't have sustainable measures to reimburse for these amazing services to keep the brilliance of these pharmacists afloat. And so our system is so fragmented and broken that it's just really difficult to know who to even go to when it comes to managing medications, especially in our seniors. In fact, people are on the front lines, see it every day. It could be the wellness director. It could be the custodian who's seeing another patient fall. It could be a nurse in the hallway. It could be the speech pathologist, or it could be the physical therapist or occupational therapist. There's so many touch points in the healthcare system, but why is it we fall shy when it comes to the role of the pharmacist? Doesn't make sense to me, right? And that's a part of the problem. We don't have a holistic approach to unify medication issues and really convey the importance of reducing that harm in our seniors. We just don't. And so our system relies on really the patient advocating for themselves or having an amazing clinician who sees the issue and is able to jump on it. Now, mind you, a lot of the healthcare providers are burned out now. There's the pandemic, there's tons going on in the healthcare industry. People have taken a hit financially. And so it's a little hard to catch every little issue that falls through the cracks. And that's why I really started this company, Geriatrics, to provide that helping hand and show that there is benefit and overall improvement when we have a streamlined method of communication, and that we have a system of team-based providers who see the impact of addressing medications before they put someone in the ER. So another issue is that, truthfully, some of our senior care providers, they don't exactly see the real-time benefit or the value of being that de-prescribing advocate, right? Again, this is the medication mindset that I talk about, that we have to shift. We have to shift out of this reactive approach to healthcare and look at things proactively. What are you doing to really go against the grain and address this issue of overmedicated seniors? Do you have patients that are falling multiple times after a medication change? Have you asked if they're on more than 5 or 10 medications at a time? What are you doing to develop your own de-prescribing plan within your senior care setting? Yeah, I'll wait. I want to know. I'm curious to know what you all are doing and putting in place, because I am here to show you that there is a way to do this sustainably and a way to do this organically with some of the resources you already have now. So what thing you should start doing instead is to develop some type of de-prescribing action plan. And that's something that we'll also provide with you as a part of our De-Prescribing Accelerator. But more importantly, we want you to see that we cannot continue to pass the buck. We cannot continue to just keep putting this on another provider's desk or another patient's funeral because we aren't sitting up and advocating as best as we can. We got to put our egos aside, y'all. It's not about, oh, well, someone else wrote this. I don't want to touch it. It's not my expertise. This is a community problem, okay? We already have an opioid pandemic to deal with. What makes you think we don't have a pandemic with medications that are already prescribed and intended for the best interests of our patients? There's still an issue of 275,000 people dying each year from people being mismanaged with their meds. So that's significant and enough for us to tackle this together as a team. So develop a de-prescribing plan. You know, that could be maybe leveraging one of your charge nurses, that may be potentially looking at using your pharmacist or contracting with a pharmacist to talk through this. Or beautifully enough, we can give you a toolkit to help you frame the right messaging and questions to educate and empower your patients and your communities. What are you doing to start conversations around de-prescribing? Are you having workshops? Are you having ways to have an ongoing dialogue with your patients? What are your thoughts on sharing educational brochures and pamphlets every time you have an annual or a checkup? Because medication management isn't a one-stop and done kind of thing. You have to consistently review and reassess and make sure that the patient is getting the best out of their care when it comes to those meds. So that's another huge thing I want to make sure you take away with today, is to develop a de-prescribing action plan with your team. Just talk about it. Are you seeing patients with more than 5 or 10 medications? Okay, if you are, let's talk about which medications. What medications do you think the patient's probably having the most difficulty with? Keep it open-minded. See if they have adverse events or side effects they're suffering from. See if they find themselves a little more dehydrated, maybe a little more drowsy in the morning than usual. Ask about their water intake. Ask about what they're doing to exercise. Again, we can make this as general or as broad as you want it to be, but what can you do right now to really start putting in a plan in place? Number one, have a de-prescribing plan. Ask when was the last time they had a full review with someone about their medications. Ask when was the last time they had a full discussion on why they're on each one and how can they safely stop the ones that they don't need anymore. Those are 2 questions right there that you can empower your patients with. But also, we can back your tools to show you, hey, if you have this medication, you may have a higher risk of this happening. Or if you have this health condition, you may have a higher risk of that happening. Again, we want to give people the tools to empower themselves, but we also want to make it as easy and seamless as possible to advocate for safe de-prescribing, okay? Also, one thing you should start thinking about doing is looking at problematic medications, okay? You want to get very familiar with which medications are most problematic in senior patients. And in our last episode of choosing the red pill versus the blue pill, we talked a lot about the advocacy of the Beers list and having that readily handy in your clinic and having discussions weekly with your team about this. This is not, again, a one-stop shop fits all. You have to have a multifaceted, multi-layer approach to talk about de-prescribing actively. So, are you using tools that are clinically available to talk about harmful medications that are on the Beers list? Again, it's not a fast and hard science, but it's a great guideline to give you the tools to really start pinpointing which meds may lead to more falls, or which meds may be problematic with people with kidney disease or any urinary issues, liver issues, alcoholism. Again, the list goes on and on. So start with the basics, have a convo, print out the Beers list, and have a team discussion, just going through the meds, going through what you see, and talk about it. Educate your team first so that you can start educating your patients on a more streamlined level of care, right? So we talked about the Beers list. These are some of the tools that you can use to assess risk. They have several others. I mean, they have false risk assessments with the steady algorithm that you can use. That's also free, available online, STEADI. It's a great tool to assess the risk of falls in geriatric and senior patients. We have what's called the Anticholinergic burden scale. That's another one that's super, super helpful to have an idea of whether people may be suffering, especially when it comes to those patients who are dementia patients and may have issues with cognitive therapy as well as with movement disorders. That's another great tool I use when I do my assessments for my geriatric patients as well. And then last but not least, you can start working with a pharmacist today. I'm telling you, you can work with one today, contract with them. We are not confined to your local pharmacy. We are near and far, and we work with several different types of clinical outpatient settings. So why not think of a pharmacist as someone who has an ace in your spade that you can use to develop a completely entire revenue stream with just de-prescribing alone? Not to mention, we're trying to still save you money and time as a home care or healthcare agency or caregiver advocacy group. The goal is to minimize your time and minimize your resources helping people that could have been otherwise prevented. Am I right? So, what can you do now to make sure that you are doing what needs to be done to implement de-prescribing? First and foremost, we've talked about the importance of the medication mindset, right? We got to stop seeing meds as the end all be all, but as a last resort for people who otherwise are not doing well with preventative measures and lifestyle changes to their care. You also want to talk about using de-prescribing as a marketing tool. So we don't talk about it enough in the healthcare community, but de-prescribing is extremely important, and you can start leveraging the power of de-prescribing just by saying you're running a de-prescribing workshop. We're using the tools available with our De-Prescribing Accelerator. Of course, you can just have your own nurse or pharmacist who's trained to speak on this, discuss this with your community, and that's just as fine. Again, de-prescribing needs to start with the patient, right? The patient is the CEO of their care. So how can we assume that we can de-prescribe? The patient doesn't know about it or doesn't care about it or doesn't even see it as a way out. So literally, your outpatient clinic can use de-prescribing as literally a measuring tactic, or excuse me, as a marketing tool. And marketing is even better for growing your revenue and your potential client base because you're showing them ways to get off of medications safely. Also, we talked about using de-prescribing as a potential workshop that you can have members pay for, but you can also look at potentially leveraging your impact with stopping harmful medication use to negotiate contracts with local providers in the neighborhood. Maybe providers will catch wind of you using this de-prescribing service, and they're going to want to send more patients your way if they find that you are holistically helping them avoid costs and avoid harm and save time, especially if people are better managed because they're coming to your place of service to get a more holistic approach to care. You can also leverage working with insurance companies. So that could be a tool that can also be used as a way to show that you're reducing costs and impact, or maybe billable, not billable, but maybe preventable cost prohibitive measures that patients have using the healthcare system. If you're able to quantify and show that your service or workshop or collaboration with XYZ provider has led to X amount of dollars saved and maybe 10 medications reduced, you can use that as leverage and use that as a marketable and honestly brilliant marketing plan for insurance companies, because they love the numbers and they love to see patient harm and cost avoidance. That's like their best friend. So if you can quantify this and show cost avoidance, man, you're already in the game of making and increasing your revenue just because of de-prescribing alone. And then another approach that you can use right now is the beauty of grant funding. Guess what? There is grant funding for de-prescribing for your clinic or practice, especially through the U.S. De-Prescribing Network. They're very much community and research focused on giving grants for people who have the power to implement this. And so this can easily be a tool. They have a mini grant starting at $60,000 per year, which you can again renew with each year of putting in de-prescribing services into place. So there are grants, there is leveraging your brand as a facility that's holistic and provides de-prescribing services. There's using your quantifiable wins to leverage with insurance companies who may like what you're providing. And of course, there's you just growing your practice alone with having de-prescribing workshops and webinars that you can literally start marketing today, all with the power of de-prescribing, and of course with our amazing De-Prescribing Accelerator that will show you how to do all of this as a part of our cohort. So I think I gave way more than 3 simple ways to use de-prescribing to increase your clients and your revenue, but I hope today was helpful for you all. Again, we talked about marketing de-prescribing workshops or services that you can contract with the pharmacist with for your setting. You could basically leverage your growth and client revenue as you grow and market de-prescribing itself as a service directly to patients. We can also talk about grant funding opportunities that are available for clinics and institutes that are all about de-prescribing and putting some power into the powers that be. And lastly, of course, collaborating with providers can also grow your revenue and client base as well if you're providing this holistic, unified, team-based approach to de-prescribing. So I really hope you all found this so helpful. Again, I'm Dr. DeLon Canterbury. I'm a geriatric pharmacist and founder of Geriatrics. Thank you for tuning in to the red pill versus the blue pill. Help me unleash our potential and break through our broken healthcare system today. Choose the red pill. Do not be another person who passes the buck and lets another senior patient fall in harm's way because of overprescribing. The blue pill is saying you just want to maintain the status quo and not go the extra mile for your patients. Choose the red pill. Learn how you can leverage your own pharmacist. Learn how you can put de-prescribing into your practice today and start growing your business. This is Dr. DeLon Canterbury. Again, thank you for tuning in with another episode of Red Pill, Blue Pill. We'll be back again tomorrow. We'll share more tips about how you can use de-prescribing. But comment below. Let me know what you think about the power of de-prescribing. What barriers have you faced if you've had these conversations? I would love to know. And if you're interested in joining our De-Prescribing Accelerator, be sure to comment red pill below. Be sure to let me know, and I will directly reach out to you with further details on the power of what you can do to put de-prescribing today into your practice. You guys take care. All the best, and I'll be back tomorrow. Have a good one, y'all.